Welcome everyone to the Goods & Co. podcast. My name is Isaac Matthews and I am your host. Here on the podcast, we share the stories of local businesses and artists in the Northwestern Ontario region of Canada, proudly supporting ventures owned by members of the LGBTQ, BIPOC, and women-led communities. Today's episode is brought to you by the new Woodside Bar, located in the Goods & Co. Market, downtown Thunder Bay, bringing you crafted cocktails and a curated wine and beer menu to suit all taste buds. Follow along on Instagram at the Woodside Bar. That again is at the Woodside Bar. All right, welcome back to the Goods & Co. podcast. Today, Dane Newbold, so good to have you here, my friend.
How you doing, Isaac?
I'm doing fantastic. So we are here to talk about many things, but I think it'd be really interesting to start first with you and with the Foundry, because obviously I think this community is very familiar with the Foundry. It's been a staple to the downtown core for so many years now. But there's probably a story behind it that a lot of people might not know, so this could be a cool opportunity to maybe dive into that. So yeah, tell about yourself, how you got into the Foundry, and where it all kind of came from.
Sure. I'm a LU University graduate. I went into the philosophy program and the political science program, and I got 2 degrees from that, which ultimately doesn't lead to a ton of jobs unless you're planning on teaching political science or philosophy. So the other option is open a bar, pretty much,
naturally,
to talk about that kind of stuff, right? But I worked for years at the Madhouse, which has always been one of my favorite bars in the city. And, restaurant work always made a lot of sense to me. I worked a little bit as a telemarketer growing up and doing different jobs along the way. But I think cooking was the only one I ever felt like satisfaction at doing. Like when you actually finish the job each day, you didn't feel like a part of your soul had been ripped out. You felt instead that you'd done something good, like you looked out at the restaurant and you could see people happy and having fun. And it just became a thing for me. I was content making less money doing that. And then from there, I moved on through a few different restaurants till I landed at Madhouse. And Madhouse was just compared to the other environments I worked in before, Madhouse felt like a family, they were still serious about stuff and they had standards, but it was a lot more relaxed and a lot more accepting and a lot less about being a certain way for a company,
Right.
being a certain role. So I fell in love with that place and I worked there for about 8 years. And when I was working there, that's where I met Maylin and that's where I met Josh. And it's where a ton of my friends over the years, some of my best people I've come into contact through there. And then at a certain point along the way, I was kind of coming to the end of my tenure there. And my dad and mom bought a building downtown. And I don't think they had any real plan for it at first. They were talking about renting it out to a bike club and just a bunch of random kind of ideas. I think my dad always knew he was building a bar with it. He just kind of kept it in hiding, you know. But as soon as we got it going, it became this idea that we were going to develop it into a bar. And I was just kind of at the end of my run at Madhouse. I left Madhouse to come and help, in any way that I could, because they just needed somebody. My dad was in and out of town all the time working on the pipeline. So I came in and just started doing things like driving the truck here and there, picking up supplies, doing basic construction stuff. I learned a lot of little things on the go and got to be involved in the whole build. And at the time, we were developing it with Ryan Anderson, Chippy Anderson, who ended up opening up Cheers, the Village. Yeah. So he went on to that, but he was kind of planning it out with us. And along the way, it just didn't end up working out. And we were left in a position where it was like, somebody's going to have to run this thing. And I stepped up to do it. It was a scary kind of undertaking with all of that, because you never really know how any of this is going to go. And, everything's kind of on the line, but we went for it, and the name came from that. We kicked around names for the better part of a year. I remember loving all kinds of names and hating all kinds of names a day later. And then my dad came up with one called the Foundry. And I remember thinking it was not great. And I kept bringing it around to people, and everyone kept loving it. And I was like, oh man, I'm really not okay. I've got to, got to at least look into this. You know,
Yeah.
I'll do some research on it and see. And I looked into it and found out that there's a real history of a foundry in Thunder Bay. There was the Woodside Brothers Foundry years ago, and the foundry was, I think it was somewhere in the marina, and they were the first. They were intrinsically connected to the shipping industry in Thunder Bay. So they were the ones making anchors and making blades for propellers. And they were also making things for the city, like manhole covers. You can still see some of the manhole covers around the city today are branded with Woodside Brothers.
Oh, cool.
And along the way, they were the first company in the city to ever build a steam engine, because somebody came in with plans when it first came out, and they're like, hey, I think we can build this. And Foundry created the first steam engine, which created the first example of electricity in Thunder Bay.
Wow.
Right. And from there, it was the first building to provide electricity to somebody else in the city, because the farmers market just across the way, they linked everything in and powered it up,
That's
so
amazing.
yeah, so it had this real kind of history to it. The feel that, you had a company that was focused on creating things, and helped create more than just the things, but a scene, like a vibrant downtown, a city. It was all crafted from just kind of a basic starting point. And I feel like what's happened in Thunder Bay in the last 10 years has really been that. I mean, you've had a few bars that have always been here, and some that have fallen off over the years, and some that have kind of fought for it the whole time. And I'm not saying we did anything different, but once Foundry opened, you started to see like a whole resurgence of people, having faith in what was going on downtown and putting money into it. So you start to see just this snowball effect of bars and developments, and what's going on in this building now. I mean, that's, to me, it's the apex of that entire movement.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've definitely been witness to the fact that over the last, like you said, 10 years. And how long has Foundry been open now?
Foundry's on I think it's year 8, and we're going for year 9 now.
Yeah, so you guys were right at the precipice of that mental and consciousness shift about the downtown Port Arthur or Thunder Bay space. And it really has, like you said, snowballed, it seems, because a lot of people are getting involved. A lot of people are kind of injecting the culture with a lot more small business and locally owned business, whether that's restaurants or bars or not. There's a lot of things that seem to be coming in downtown.
Absolutely. There was a whole resurgence of the food scene about 10 years ago. I mean, Madhouse was always kind of doing it. They had a cool kind of thing going on. I feel like once Steve Simpson and the Sovereign opened up, like that was incredible. You just saw like a whole new view on food in the downtown. Like people suddenly, like the ceiling lifted up, we could see that there was potential for people to be doing incredible things. And it seems like everybody's just been trying to step up to that bar ever since, like you see more and more people coming up with interesting things. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So then when obviously Mei Lin at one point would have come to you and said, hey, I have this crazy idea. What was that like for you? Like what was your thoughts on, you said that obviously this building is so important to the history of Thunder Bay and this downtown core.
Well, I mean, it kind of developed in a weird way too, where May had come to the Foundry and had worked within the Foundry and helped us like craft and shape so much of what we did there. And then May decided to move on. She went on to the Chanterelle and had a good couple years there, kind of having a major role in developing that whole scene. But I know she always had this idea of what she wanted to do here. She was talking about it for years with me, and I kind of tend to be so kind of focused and self-oriented at times. Like, I'll listen and I'll agree it's a good idea, but I didn't think that it was going to come about, at least not this soon in our lives. And then while she was working at Chanterelle, this opportunity started to present itself, and she just had the opportunity to go for it, and she did. And then we got hit with a shutdown like the next day, but it's been great. It's like the time spent during the shutdown. I mean, it's all how you use it, right? And lots of things have been accomplished, like we're doing a lot of great things at Foundry, and what's developing here is just, it's really special. Like when we finally come out of this thing together, we're going to have potentially something that's going to redefine the way that retail and the overall downtown experience is.
I believe that 100%. I want to go back really quick. I'm gonna touch on. We'll come back to what we're talking about now, but really quickly with COVID, a lot of our guests we've had on the podcast, we've kind of touched on how COVID has affected business. How is your experience with the local scene in this community supporting you guys through COVID?
There's been a ton of support, like especially like when we first shut the doors, we saw a major outpour of support for the idea that we were gonna do that, that we were gonna, shut it down for a bit to be safe. And we sat for 3 months and I just was going crazy, like I can't deal with just doing nothing, And so at the end of 3 months, we were deciding we're gonna set up the patio, like we're just gonna put it on the ground and see what happens, like if we get it on the ground and we get it all closed in, then maybe one day soon we get the announcement, at least we can go back to patio season, right? So we start building the patio, and no word of a lie, as we're putting it on the ground, people are driving by and stopping and yelling from their cars, or like stopping to talk to us. Like I had a reporter come up to me while I was on the street, and they're just relentlessly asking us if we're opening that week. And we're like, man, like it's still a shutdown. Like we're just putting the patio down, guys. Like, but it was amazing to see how many people were excited. And as the day went on, the announcement came out that Friday patios were going to officially be open.
That's wild.
Which was just hilarious, because we're like, oh, I guess rush. Like, like let's get this down. But it's like it intensified the traffic around us too. People kept coming down being like, it's Friday, right? You're open Friday. And I remember going from thinking like, I don't know when this is going to come back, to being like, yeah, I can't see why not. Sure.
Right.
And so we opened the Friday. It was just this ridiculous just crash bang boom of a reopening, like 2 or 3 days of cleaning and prepping and getting my staff reorganized and then coming back. But as soon as we came back, it's like we were back in it.
Yeah.
Like every day we were packed all through the spring, all into the summer. And then you see the push from the BIA for the streetery. You see the movement towards these inclusive kind of things downtown to help the businesses survive. And I know some of them aren't perfect. They come with like little issues that pop up, but seeing like the organizations of the city and how they're trying to work through these things to create a positive and potentially successful downtown through these moves, it's been amazing.
Awesome.
Like you would never think that the city would just be willing to take like, a good sized budget and throw it at something to fix these things. But, it's the reality of this year, these last 2 years. We're all scrambling, and to see the city and to see things like the BIA try to get behind us and prop us up, it's really awesome.
That's
it's
amazing.
a really good sign of what the city wants to see succeed in the long run.
I love that. And let's hope that coming into the spring and summer season now, things kind of clear up and open up again so we can get on those patios and enjoy
That's the
it.
hope. Vaccines are coming, and you're seeing the numbers go up in the city. Like I know we can all be critical and we can all be worrisome about stuff. I know there's fear about it, but it's hope. It's things are coming back.
Definitely. So obviously, with May taking over this building and looking into the market, you're no stranger to this building yourself. You've kind of you have other hobbies and interests and whatnot that have actually associated you with this building a bit.
Totally. Like, I mean, anybody that's lived in Thunder Bay for as long as I have remembers the Eden Center when it was alive, when it was fully thriving. I mean, this place back in the day before the casino was, when I was young, was thriving, was full of people. It was the major shopping center in the downtown. And like when you looked at events like Harborfest and things of that nature, that mall had so much life and so much activity moving through it all the time. And in the later years, it was kind of just a bit of a mausoleum that we would bike and skateboard through and, get chased out by security and whatnot. And then we got to see it get torn down, or at least chunks of it, the Skywalk, the entrance by the Black Pirates Pub. We got to see the casino come about, which is good for the city. But even after that, like it just sat for so long, just not really doing anything. Like this building, I have so many memories of as a kid. And then a few years back, my band was looking for a place to jam. We had been in Hillcrest High School for a little while, while it was under development, and a friend, Hillary McDowell, reached out to us and told us that her dad was still renting out spaces in here.
Okay.
And we managed to grab a space for my band. So I spent about a year or so working on an album here that we're still working on right now, but it's going to be coming out this year from Hunt and Gather. So that was one thing I got to do in this building, was work on an entire album and build a studio in the basement.
Crazy.
Yeah, and then when Jordan bought the building, when the new owners came in and purchased the building, we had to move out as part of the new change in ownership. In all honesty, we might have been able to stay, but we ended up leaving anyways. And a couple months later, I found myself back in here because I realized that there was about a roughly 10,000 square foot space down in the basement that I could use for the martial arts school that I study at.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we had been looking to move from Victoriaville Mall for quite a while, and Victoriaville Mall was officially shutting down, and we were getting the notices, that our time was coming to an end, and finally we managed to solidify the deal here, and we brought Sunkono World-Class Martial Arts from Victoriaville into the basement here at the Eden Center.
Awesome.
or whatever the new name for this
Yeah,
building
I guess
is,
so.
right? But yeah, we managed to move our entire dojo over, and sure enough, 1 weekend shut down. So we've been trying to deal with it. We're about a year open now here. Like, if you were to count the months that we're actually open, maybe 3 or 4 months or something like that. But it's been great. You're seeing just to see the effect that Jordan and his teams had downstairs. When you look at dilapidated basements being just suddenly renovated and retrofitted with brand new lighting and LEDs and new walls and new everything, like everything back to proper function, it's really something. You get to see this part of the building come back to life. We were happy to get in there early as like one of the first tenants in here and lock down our deal. And from there, we're starting to see the building develop around us. We're seeing Jordan's been developing these offices that we're in right now. And we're starting to see the market coming together, and like the space that was developed for a cafe on the outside, and all these things that are a part of this, all these deals that are clicking into place. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces, but you can see how, if all of this stuff comes together, this is going to be a thriving economic center of the downtown again.
Absolutely. And it's so good to see them use the bones of these buildings. Like, they're so well built back then. 99% cement, like, just structurally. Structurally, it'll last forever.
One of my favorite Auditor General songs. Like, he wrote about a book that was written about the city where we just have these buildings, these amazing buildings that are being used for such mundane, ineffectual things at times, but they're,
if anything,
they're
at all
over, like you look at the Hydro building with all those faces carved on the outside. It's really incredible.
So it's great that he's come in and all these teams have come in and started to use these buildings again, and hopefully bring them back to life.
Yeah,
definitely. So then, going into the market, you are not only a big support system for this, but your Foundry has a bit of a hand in coming to the market. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So, anything May is doing, we try to support and get behind in one way or another. But as we started to develop this idea in the market pretty early on, we were like, man, it'd be nice if we could get those liquor sales.
Amen.
So we talked early on about setting up a bar within it. Nothing too huge, nothing like a full space or a full show venue or anything, but just something where we could facilitate liquor sales within the space. Because one of the things that made Craft Revival, just to take this outside of this for a second, anyone that knows about Goods & Co. probably knows about Craft Revival and how it kind of started with the Foundry and then built out across all the downtown markets. But one of the things that always kind of made it special in some ways is that you could get a drink, you could like have a beverage and walk around the market, and it could be part of the experience, So right away when we were looking at Goods & Co., we were like, man, it'd be nice to recreate that. Like, you want to have that little aspect of what made this work so well. So we started to talk about the idea of a bar. We kicked around a bunch of different options for it, but the one that seems to have settled, that we seem to like the most right now, is Woodside. To take it right back to that original story, the Woodside Brothers Foundry. And we're starting to think that Woodside is the brand that we're developing for the market. And it kind of makes sense too when you think of a foundry then extending to the market just across the way. we're doing something that harkens back to where this all started for us. So
I just got goosebumps thinking about it. It's
right?
cool how it's such a recreation of history, and even bringing to the name Goods & Co. We've talked about this in other podcasts as well, and the names of the foundry and just recreating history.
Well, I love the story that came about with Matthews Goods & Co. Like to me, that's really special when you hear about that kind of stuff. It's like, wow, it's harmonic, you know. I like that idea where
Absolutely.
It's like things, they kind of harmonize over time. So you see reflections of things in history where it's like, it's not quite the same, but that's pretty close. I like it.
Oh, it's amazing, man. There's so many amazing things coming up in the next couple of years for this city and this downtown core for sure.
Mm-hmm.
This has been great, Dane. Thank you so much. We touched on a couple things. Obviously, if people want to support the foundry, they can always take out, order in, whatever. That's all still happening.
Take out, order in. We've been doing Panzerottis, which are selling off the charts. We're coming for the Panzo market.
Oh no.
But and there's a plan for food in the market too. We're trying to develop our ideas. Like we're working on some different angles that we're going to approach. But yeah, we're excited to be a part of this whole thing. We want to be a part of the recreation of that downtown scene. Like, I don't know if people remember, like, I guess you got to be like 30 or over at least at this point, but there was a point where the whole downtown would be packed with people, the streets filled with people, the Eden Center, just people flooding in and out, exiting different entrances, like knowing what's coming into that market and what's developing and like how it's going to build relationships. Like there's things that are coming into the market that will work and partner with the businesses that are situated around it already. There are things within the market that allow us as businesses to extend into them, you know, like local coffee shops and local bars that create things like the Tomlin or us that create like dry goods that we can sell. You know, there's all kinds of options for us to put these things into this body that can then continue to sell stuff for us. And then you just see the expansion of things like retail. For me, one of the biggest points on all this is like when you walk through Intercity Mall, you could pick any day of the week. You could pick the day during a shutdown. And that mall is full of people. And like a virus won't chase the people out of the mall, right? There's 100 people in the mall at any given time. So the idea that retail and shopping centers build an area, that they build a following, it's undeniable. You know, like you saw what happened to the downtown mall here. It got gutted because Intercity developed and kept growing and expanding. But I think you're seeing a reversion of that nowadays. You're seeing a move away from the big box chains. You're seeing a move back to small stores, especially locally based stores that can deal on a one-to-one basis with customers. And, you know, seeing that kind of thing build again, you know, that's gonna see the city thrive. That's gonna see the locals thrive rather than big outlet stores, you know?
Yeah, and I really think there was a generational thing happening for shopping local anyway. And this whole pandemic has been just an expedited process for that. Yeah, it's amazing.
You know, it's like, it's knowing that the money that you put out there is going to help your neighbor. It's knowing that the thing that you get in the mail might be safe or might not, you know, like these are concerns that are, you know, they're not great all the time, but at the same time, this is the reality of the situation that we find ourselves in. It's that our views on the world and how we buy our products changes. You know, even when you think like a lot of the stuff about this pandemic could have been created just because of things like food shortages and the way that our food chains work, you know, it reinvigorates the idea that we should be focusing on locally sourced and created items. We should be focusing on local economies and local communities as a way of growing, you know, that these produce safer results in the long run and results that'll keep us all economically and physically healthier one way or another.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. Dane, thank you so much. We're very
absolutely,
much looking
Isaac.
forward to you guys moving into the market this summer.
It's going to be a pleasure.
I can't wait to see you. And yeah, we'll be in touch about a lot of things.
Sounds good.
Cheers.
Awesome.
Thank you everyone so much for joining us for this episode of the Goods & Co podcast. We have several local entrepreneurs lined up for this season of the Goods & Co podcast, so make sure to subscribe and be notified when new episodes are released. Once again, this episode was brought to you by the new Woodside Bar opening this fall inside the Goods & Co Market downtown Thunder Bay. serving up curated cocktails, delicious wines, and craft beers. Follow along on Instagram at The Woodside Bar. That handle again is at The Woodside Bar.